Coming up after the break, what if you were paying for 911 service that wasn't even there? That's what happened to some residents in Canada's north, and now they're getting some justice. The Roundup is next. Jack Ma, the co-founder of the massive Chinese online marketplace Alibaba, has cancelled his speech at the conference of the International Anti-Counterfeiting Coalition in Florida after his company was kicked out of the group. The story kicks off the Roundup. Nicole Verkindt is the founder and president of OMX. We talked about Alibaba and its involvement in this anti-counterfeiting thing just last week, and you were then saying, isn't this great? Bring them into the fold. They're actually trying really hard. It's since blown up kind of in everybody's face.
Yeah, it looks like they're still sort of trying to figure this out, right? The associations, had these long-standing members of these big brands who are pissed off at Alibaba because they're selling so much on the platform.
But there's also the anti-counterfeiting group's president turns out to have had very close ties with Alibaba. Michael Kors has quit this organization. Does it come back to the point that I think you made quite eloquently last time, that Jack Ma is clearly investing resources and time and energy in trying to do something? Shouldn't that be celebrated rather than leave him on the curb and don't let him come talk to you?
Well, if you want to solve counterfeiting, you have to bring him into the tent. I absolutely believe that. I mean, bigger than Amazon and eBay combined, isn't that shocking?
Yeah, yeah.
And now that they've just gone public,
alone, yeah.
I think they're only going to grow more. And so we have to bring them into the fold to solve this. And I think they're trying to save face here by not speaking and sending the president instead. But I think that's a shame, and they should be including him.
But I mean, that's just it. He spent the day, he was supposed to go give a speech at this organization and probably talk about a unique perspective on the challenges that exist for an organization like his, the efforts that they are making, and where he thinks they can make that up. Instead, we don't hear from him at all, but he had to sit down with the president at the White House. It's not like this, this guy has such massive influence. Why not let him in? Is this just egos at this point?
I think it's egos, and I think I can see the other side of the argument that's saying, well, of course he's making tons of money off this. He's going to let the Wild West continue for as long as he possibly can until he's forced. I'd like to know what he said in that meeting with President Obama, though.
Yeah, you and me both. The fact, though, I think they have 2,000 people. They had 2,000 people full-time working on just trying to stop counterfeiting on Alibaba. He said they'd hire several hundred more and add if they need
And you can
be.
automate a lot of that. I was looking at how YouTube
Could you really?
Yeah, YouTube's automating a ton of their content curation and making sure there aren't videos on there that they don't want on there.
Like
so,
kind of they take a cell phone video of a video on your screen and put that up. Is it like you can bot that?
I know that a lot of the tech platforms, they don't have to be necessarily controlling the content. They only have to a certain extent, but they're trying to automate as much as they can.
Okay, the next story, Foxconn, legendary iPhone maker, just paid $350 million to buy Nokia that I didn't frankly know even existed. Are dumb phones, regular old, sort of touch tone, are they back?
I think they've always been there, and I think that market is growing dramatically. I did my sort of thesis or final year project in university on the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid and the concept which Bill Gates bought into, that you can eradicate poverty through profits or through going after that market and servicing them. And I think there's a whole bunch of people that are sort of, I call skipping the line, so skipping the landline, and they're going and they don't have internet service on their dumb phones, but they're doing mobile payments by texting.
For sure.
And I think there's a huge market there, and the Nokia brand, I mean, we all know it. That was my first cell phone, so I think it's still a strong brand, and that's their best chance to survive and grow.
They sold 590 million units in 2015. Smartphones combined sold 1.4 billion. They outsold the global car market in terms of volume shipped. I mean, people are still using these things. It's almost like a Warren Buffett investment. Find a thing that exists that everybody else has devalued and say, yeah, sure, we'll take a piece of that.
Yeah, still a billion people something for $1. I know one thing, their batteries are going to last a lot longer than my phone.
That's true.
Remember they used to last for 5 days?
Oh, I know. You never need to plug them in.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of other things that we need to touch on. The Mitsubishi's president stepped down after the mileage claim, the mileage cheating scandal that company got involved in. Suzuki's now also apologizing for improper road tests. It said it didn't actually, sort of make fake mileage claims, that the road tests were just improper in their words. You take this, you take the emission scandals from last year. Can you trust the claims that these big automakers are making anymore?
Well, what I didn't understand was how aggressive the legislation was that the United States put in place. And what I understand was that it was originally put in place for security reasons.
Is that a fact?
Yeah, so it was the Energy Interdependence Security legislation that was passed in 2007 by Bush. And it was all about interdependence from Middle East. And from it forced really aggressive changes to emissions, and I think that these companies they felt the pressure, and they were requiring their staff, and that was flowing down internally within these corporations, and they had to make dramatic changes, and maybe they were pushing the limits on some of those changes and those claims.
One of the things that sort of comes out of it, I mean, I remember the first time I went to go buy a car, and I remember looking at the mileage stats, and it was my dad or whoever was around was saying, none of that really matters. They test those in a lab, it exists entirely differently out on the streets. And that sort of thought process existed for years. Everybody sort of accepted that to be true, and it was always slightly less than you get than they claimed, whether it was on mileage or emissions or whatever the case may be. Has somebody just sort of taken that and run with it, or has it expanded, or is it just still the same thing, and you just can't believe what they say?
It sounds like what's happening is from the very top, they're saying we need to dramatically improve our fuel economy because of this U.S. legislation, and we don't want to make changes for every single market. And so that's flowing right down through the organization, and maybe employees are being incentivized to make those changes, and so they're getting more and more aggressive with having to make these changes, and that's where you start to see errors, I would imagine.
And just to close this out, do you think this actually has an impact? I mean, will now car makers have to adjust the way they approach this, or will they continue trying to push those boundaries?
The data is showing there's a big impact, and I think CEOs are scared of being the next Mitsubishi president, and so they're saying, we have to make sure that these mileage, that they're correct.
Okay. And lastly, Bell is now offering to pay $1 million in a settlement to this group of people led by a man in Yellowknife. They were paying a 75-cent fee for 911 emergency services when 911 emergency services don't exist in the region these people were living in. It's a slightly insane story. Have you ever heard about any of this before? It's been going on for 10 years.
I haven't.
Apparently.
I was just in Yellowknife, and I think that's sad that was happening. But, I mean, who the heck reads their entire phone bill and really understands every line anyways? That was the whole Virgin Mobile business plan. Let's put together a phone bill that people actually understand. So I guess class action lawsuits are getting a little bit more popular in Canada now. But it sounds to me like the lawyers are the ones making a lot of money.
Well, and Bell has spent a lot of time fighting this. I mean, the lawsuit was filed in 2007, and you would think if somebody said, hey, I'm paying for the service and it doesn't exist, then, well, maybe I shouldn't have to pay for it. We have a quote board from the appeal court judge that was delivering the initial ruling on this. He earlier in the year said, in my respectful view, connecting someone to nothing is still nothing, and went on to say, it's like delivering to a starving person a photograph of a turkey dinner and then charging him or her for a turkey dinner. That lays it out pretty clear. To fight that for 10 years, kind of remarkable.
Yeah, well, at least there's one avenue that consumers can go, right? Because you're not going to launch a lawsuit for just your 75 cents a month.
All right. Nicole Verkindt, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Peter.